Special, 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 special. Hello, everybody. It's your Trek Lord of West Michigan, Charlie Carden, back here with Code 47 on an off week. We were off last week, if you're listening to these in sequence, because my wife, April, and I were off to Star Trek Las Vegas, which is why she is here with me now. We're going to talk about that experience. Hello, darling.
Hello.
How are you?
I am doing well.
Glad to hear it. So as intrepid listeners will remember, we April and I did go. April and I are married. If you're not an intrepid listener, but we're big Star Trek fans, which is why we go to events like Star Trek Las Vegas and the Star Trek cruise, which we did back in February. That ported out of Los Angeles. It was a fun trip. We talked about that in the special edition back at that time. But we started making plans probably afterwards to go to Star Trek Las Vegas, because Creation Entertainment is the company that puts on this Las Vegas event. They've been doing it for, a few dozen years. Creation itself, as we learned while we were there, because it was a soundbite that came out of one of their panels, is celebrating their 50th anniversary, which is crazy. I had no idea that they had been doing events for so long, but this was something that April and I decided to turn into a road trip. So we got in our brand new car, and put 4,300 miles on it by driving from here in Michigan. And our first stop was where, honey? You said we're going to do some Star Trek stuff along the way. So where did we stop?
Riverside, Iowa.
And why did we stop there?
Because it's the future birthplace of Captain Kirk.
Yes.
And there is a statue and a plaque and a museum.
Right. And in my esteem, not to put anyone down, I think they could have stopped at the statue.
Yes.
Because we got in town, we left here on a Sunday morning, we arrived there on a Sunday afternoon, and the plaque or the statue is great. And there is just across this little side, and Riverside is a very small little town. We went into the museum, and it was basically kind of like a Star Trek flea market without anything for sale. They had some merch, shirts and stuff. We bought a garden standee that was the Klingon symbol. That was, I thought, the coolest thing that happened. But overall, it was kind of a weird experience. I'm not going to lie to you. But you know what? It's one of those to each their own. If there are people out there who have visited it, who dig it, who like that kind of thing, I say go for it. No problem at all. Any other thoughts about the museum, hon?
I just found it fascinating that they thought that a museum was basically figures and mannequins with paper faces.
Right.
Taped to them.
And they had a handful of screen-used uniforms and costumes.
Yes. Yes. And they had Data's desk.
Yes, that was not Data's desk. And they had the same helm and navigation console from the TOS bridge that we use in shows that we do with our Starfleet International chapter, the USS Grand Petoskey. And it left me wanting, because ours is, I mean, it's not show quality, but I think we did a pretty nice job. My friend Donovan built the chair. We've been using that since we've had the club. And then Dale, who's one of our club members, built the Helm Nav console. And he did a nice job. This seemed kind of sillier, I don't know, for lack of a better expression.
It did. Like the little bits and bobs that were on the Helm console, I was like, they could have done better. Like, those look cheap. I mean, Dale, I think he used Christmas decorations.
Right. And you know what?
And they actually looked really good.
I think so. I find it to be on par with kind of what you saw. I was just watching an episode of TOS before we came down and recorded here. And you look at the bits and bobs around that bridge, and that's kind of what they look like. So anyway, I know it sounds like we're bashing it, but Riverside, Iowa, if you think that sounds fun, if you're going that way, the statue is cool. And there's an adjacent playground that the base of the playground itself is a big Starfleet Delta, which I thought was super cool. I took a bunch of pictures of that, and maybe we'll even post a few of those pictures on our SFI or our SFU social media pages. We'll see. But
we did have lunch there, and the little bar we ate at was nice. They had a plaque in the back that I think we missed, but it said something about like that was where he was conceived. gift or something.
Sure,
So
that's not weird. That's totally cool. Anyway, so from there we left, and we did a bunch of driving and touristy stuff, which we won't kind of bore you with, but we finally reached Las Vegas the day that the show started, which was Thursday. It was a Thursday through Sunday show, so we arrived in time to stand in a long line to get checked in. We had show contributors and friends of ours, Missy Merchant, who you hear on the show with me all the time, and Kay Pershawn, who you also hear on the show with me all the time. We're also in attendance. We spent some time with them, but they kind of had their own thing going on. They had a great panel that they did. They had other activities planned independent of us, but to talk about the show, I find it hard to do anything but kind of compare, contrast it with the cruise, because that's the other experience that we have. So, honey, as we were starting to walk around the floor the first day, and just overall, talk to me about some of your impressions. What were you thinking?
now, I mean, obviously, one of the first things we did was go to the vendor area, and it was bigger than Mission Chicago, but that's not saying a whole lot.
Yeah, big time. I'm sorry, Mission Chicago being the only other Star Trek show that we've been to, which was put on by a company called Reed Pop, who that is so far the only show. They were going to have another one in Seattle, which did not end up happening. So anyway.
So they did have more vendors, and as we talked to some of the vendors, we realized they actually did have licensed merch. There was a guy who had tarot cards that he had licensed, which was really cool. And so there were a very eclectic mix of vendors, but it was still on the smaller side, I guess I would say. But there was quite a mix.
Yeah, and mixed in with this vendor room, which again was the main focus of commerce, for lack of a better term. Mixed in with the vendors room was probably half, or maybe a third or 2/3, I'm not 100% sure, of the 140 something guests that were a part of the show. Now, that is something that obviously Creation boasts in spades. They have a huge guest list. Something that I either didn't notice or didn't really look into is that the other half or 2/3 of the guests are hidden behind a paywall. They don't have a table, which you would expect. You go to any local con, Grand Rapids Comic-Con here in Grand Rapids, or any of the shows that we go to in Chicago, or other ones kind of around the state, or really around the country, probably around the world. If there are guests at a show, they will generally have a table. They will be signing autographs. Photo ops are generally handled, in a separate area and on a separate schedule, and that totally makes sense. But with this, you had certain people like William Shatner, for example, who never does he doesn't hobnob with the rank and file of us fans. The dude's in his 90s. He probably doesn't want to bother. I totally get it. But even some of the newer stars of the series, like Paul Wesley, who is the new Captain Kirk, or Ed Spaliers, who is Jack Crusher in Picard season 3, did not see them, because the only way to see them, they were kind of pay to play. I walked a line with this one. I'm disappointed, because I am not an autograph and a photo op guy. I've done very few in my time. There are people like our friend Missy, for example, lives for it. Boy, that's when she goes to a show, that's all that they are doing. That is their main thing. Totally dig it. I like that people have their own thing. That's where it's at. But for me, not really kind of enjoying the thing, my leitmotif is I like to go around and I simply like to have a very brief conversation. And honey, you're with me the whole time. So you know that when I say a brief conversation, I usually excuse myself from talking to that actor, because I want them to get back to the business of making money, because that's why they're there, particularly now with the WGA and the SAG-AFTRA strike going on. This is a prime source of income for those people. So I don't want to get in the way of that. So I was very flattered that these people would even take any time to chat with me. But the biggest kind of disappointment that I had, and I was lucky that I got to see him, was I was looking forward to meeting John Billingsley, who we've interviewed on this very program. We interviewed him earlier in 2023. He talked about the Hollywood Food Coalition. He kept us just in stitches for 90 minutes, because he's a very irreverent and funny guy, and he was a paywall guy. So I was afraid I wasn't going to get to see him. And then I happened to catch him in the hallway, and he just grabbed me for a big bear bear hug. And I'm like, I'm surprised that he even remembered me. I mean, that was fun. But had I not bumped into him, though we did end up seeing him at one of the parties we went to, I was just kind of afraid that that I wouldn't get to see him at all. So there were scores of people that we didn't end up seeing. There was a handful of people that ended up canceling for various reasons. You always get various reasons, but some who came right out and said, like Kate Mulgrew, which I was excited to have Kate Mulgrew there because I wanted to have a photo op with her and April, because April is such a big Voyager fan. But, she canceled and said, definitively that it was because of the SAG-AFTRA strike. And I have a lot of respect for that. I totally get it. But I don't know. I mean, am I crazy, babe? Is it weird to have those kinds of feelings? Am I just, am I have a weird mind about it?
No, I totally agree. I think we could probably sit down. I want to say there weren't many. There weren't many that were in the main vendor room.
Maybe 25 or 30.
Yeah.
Out of 140. Yeah. That's
what they were boasting, but I don't even know because I didn't see that many. So that part was disappointing. I would agree. And I'm sure that, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was disappointing, but you did get to meet the one person that was the last person on your list.
That is correct. As soon as we walked in, I caught out of the corner of my eye Nicole DeBoer, who played Ezri Dax on DS9. We had spent some time with her on the cruise, and I walked up to her, and there was a man with his back to me, a tall black man, and it was Michael Dorn. Michael Dorn is the last of the original TNG cast members of the 9 that I had not met. So I was very excited. I stopped, made conversation with him. He was very polite. Obviously, I kind of caught him unawares because he was just standing there chatting with Nicole. He wasn't on the job. But he was very polite. And I talked to him and said, boy, I remember, and again, I probably bore the crap out of these actors saying, hey, I remember when you played like on the cruise. And I walked when we were chatting with Robert Picardo and I said, God, the first time I ever saw you was in a movie called Inner Space in 1987 when I was a kid. And that sparked a memory with him. And he told us the story about it. So I wonder if it's, a mixture of kind of amusement and annoyance when they're talking to people like us. But I said, yeah, man, I remember looking through that you were one of Apollo Creed's bodyguards in the original Rocky, and he got a chuckle out of that. So that's
but then what did you follow it up with?
I was like, April and we were born in 1976, and he just said, all right, I'm done. Which, I respect that. So, in other cases for the people who were there, the lines were long. Jonathan Frakes' line was long. Anson Mount's line was long, but it didn't matter because I ended up saying hello to him anyway. He is one of the 2 autographs that I actually have. I have an autograph of him, which I got at Mission Chicago, and I have an autograph of Jonathan Frakes, which I got at Fan Expo in Chicago also last year. Let's see. I mean, we had a lot of fun doing laps in this room, but it was, over that 4-day period. We were in, and then obviously seeing Kay and Missy's the panel that they executed, and I helped them film it with Kay's camera. We were just doing laps around that room.
And there's only so many times you can see the same thing over and over and over again. So it was kind of, we spent one day away from the con, which was good because otherwise I don't know what else we would have done.
Right.
We did not go to a lot of the panels. The panels were a little awkward this year, obviously, because of the strike. They couldn't talk about a lot of things. So it was mostly like, what kind of books do you read in your free time? And what was it like growing up? And but that's obviously because of the strike. It's nothing that they could do anything about.
Right.
But we just didn't end up going to the panels because of that.
Yeah, exactly. So, and we were kind of lucky we got to because of, people we know. Missy is very, very close with Doug Jones, and with Doug Jones's promotion company, the Cool Waters. Shout out to them. They've done a lot of great stuff with us on our Patreon with our interview segment, Personnel Files. We've been very grateful that they've helped us out with that. But we scored an invite to their party, which was at a little bar there in Vegas. That there was a back room, and we got to hang out with some people, got to meet some people, and that was fun. And there was a charity raffle, and I got to put in for that. Missy won a bunch of stuff. They were very excited about that, which is awesome. And that was cool. And then the next night, we actually, because we had lobbied for tickets for it, we went to a party put on by Fansets. They're a company that manufactures pins and the magnetic Delta badges that we use in our cosplay, the different Starfleet symbols and other stuff. And Corey, who is one of the members of our senior staff on the Grand Petoskey, our SFI chapter, actually kind of freelances for them. He became friends with them years ago. He volunteers his time helping them out at the booth and all that kind of good stuff. So we had a lot of fun going to this bar in the greater Vegas area was it called Millennium?
Yeah, like Millennium Fandom. It's
Millennium Fandom, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was, and Fansets is a part and parcel to another podcast called Trek Geeks. They're very big, have a lot of different shows. They work together. They recorded a live podcast there, which I think was kind of a weird experiment for them because there were two areas in the bar. There was the main bar itself, which was overwhelmed with what felt like 200 people and 3 bartenders. And then there was an ante room where the Trek Geeks and the Fansets people were recording a live podcast with John Billingsley, who, again, I was very glad that I bumped into him, and because I would have seen him at this party, I was glad to see him otherwise. And then Bonnie Gordon, who is the John Billingsley, of course, Dr. Phlox on Enterprise. Of course, I'm sure you know that, but you might not know the name Bonnie Gordon. She is a young lady from Louisiana who we found by talking to her, because we talked to her many, many times. She was the voice of the USS Protostar on Star Trek Prodigy, and is a singer, lives in LA. We just had a lot of great conversations with her, but she was the other guest. Well, as they're trying to record this quote unquote, I don't know if it was recorded live, but it wasn't a live podcast. The problem was you had a large rectangular room. At one end of it, there's a couch and some chairs, and kind of halfway through, there's like an island with chairs for people sitting to drinks. There's kind of a big wide space, and then at the far end of it, there were 2 chairs for the for Bonnie and John, and then on the other side of it there were the Trek Geeks guys recording. By this point, April, you and I and Corey and 2 of Corey's con buddies, who we ended up having a fabulous time talking to, had all migrated over to the bar side of the room. We were at the far side away from the bar, but everything was piping through the speakers as they're trying to record, and all we hear is shh. Shh, we're trying to record here, because everybody kept talking while they were trying to record this podcast. And I'm like, I don't know, and we've never done anything like that here on this network. We all record separately. I mean, as much as April and I are in the same house, we're not in the same room recording this, but when I record, with Todd, he lives in Minnesota. When I record with Mark, he lives in Nova Scotia, Canada. I record with Missy and Kay. They're here in Grand Rapids, and Jen Watson is in Chicago. So we're all separate, is my point. So to try to put a bunch of people in a room together to get them record in front of a live bar audience, it was an interesting experiment. I'm not going to put them down. It's cool. I'm sure I'll listen to what they turn out, but to me, it kind of sounded like an audio nightmare. Not putting them down. Yeah. Because I think it's a very cool idea, but it's kind of concept versus execution. But we had a fun night without a doubt.
I've never gone to one, but I've seen like radio shows who do that.
Yeah, same exact thing.
But I feel like they do it in a bigger area.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because they do it on like a stage.
Yeah.
And not just a room and a stage. You have separation and stuff. And so we were there in the area while the podcast recording was happening. That ended, and we kind of gravitated back over because Fansets took things back over, and they started doing trivia. And this is where things got fun, because they would say, okay, first person who raises their hand, you really got to jump your hand up when we ask a trivia question, and you can win a whatever. So very first question, boom, I got it. Second question, I was standing next to April. They asked the question. I whispered the question in her ear. We got it. We're standing next to 2 young ladies there, and shout out to Away Mission Cosplay out of Los Angeles, California. These 2 young ladies were part of it, and they were like, well, why don't you hook us up with some answers? So boom, first question, when the ladies raised their hand, gave her the wrong answer. So everybody, all eyes are on me. Next question gets asked. Oh no, the question gets asked again because nobody else raised their hand. I whisper the correct answer, because in that 3 seconds, I remember what the correct answer is. It was 2 ships. It was It was the Trieste versus the Tripoli. What was the ship that rescued Data from uh, now I'm going to forget the name of it, that rescued Data, and he was at, it was the Trieste Tripoli, blah blah. I gave the correct answer to the other cosplayer, and she won. But again, after I raised my hand and won, I couldn't raise my hand again, so I was whispering, but fortunately nobody ratted me out. So we walked away with some great fan sets pins. We had a set of Mirror Universe Deltas from Star Trek Discovery, and then we had a set of Lower Decks Deltas, which is good because I broke one of mine. So now I get to replace the one I broke. So that was fun. So that was Thursday night and Friday night. And then Saturday, we spent time with our friends John and Christy. John is my college roommate. I on our Patreon network, I do Doctor Who with him on the Facts Geek Life. He's a great guy. His wife Christy, I've known both of them for almost 30 years. They live in the Pacific Northwest. They came down, and they're big Vegas people, so they came down and showed us around and blah blah blah. And then on Sunday, it was time to wrap up and go home. It was super cool. Missy and their husband, Matt, had a marriage renewal ceremony. It was their 12th anniversary. They found a local officiant who's also a Spock cosplayer. Her friend, Doug Jones, and some of the other people from Cool Waters kind of circled around. And immediately after that, we left and we started our drive home. So our drive home took, let's see, that was Sunday. So Monday, Tuesday. So it was another 3.5 days driving home. And we saw some stuff. We kind of followed I-40 on the way home. But our Star Trek related destination on the way home was
the future birthplace of Captain Janeway.
Yes, Bloomington, Indiana. Yeah, there was and I think was it a children's museum called Wonderlab or Wonderland or something?
Something like that. I think it reminded me of the place in Lansing that, like the sciencey stuff.
Yeah. Very good. So someone had within the last 2 or 3 years sponsored a very nice bronze bust, which sits on it's a pedestal that's at the bottom end is shaped like a Starfleet comm badge, which I think is awesome. And that all spawned from series co-creator Jerry Taylor, is a graduate of Indiana University. So that was super cool. So and then we were home. So all right. So as I had mentioned in the beginning, kind of contrasting this experience versus the Star Trek cruise, and it's interesting because April, both you and I are part of a lot of the social media Facebook groups around this convention. And I don't need to, tell anybody that social media in general is always just a very weird spot to get people who have weird ideas about things. People complaining about why weren't they talking about Star Trek things? This is so boring. Dude, get out from under a rock. It was highly publicized that these people were not going to be talking about Star Trek things. But then from the one person who just absolutely raged out that I had a photo op with Zachary Quinto, who was, Spock in the JJ movies. And they took my picture and then they ushered me out of there. And this guy was so adamant, like, I earned the right to talk to him because I paid my money, and it just, people just have crazy, weird ideas. I don't know. But that's not unique to this event. But back to thinking about kind of compare contrast. So, you and I went on the cruise earlier this year. Again, we're recording this in 2023 if you're listening in the distant future. And we're going on the cruise again in 2024, which will port out of Florida, and we'll hit a couple of spots in the Caribbean and stuff. So, and honey, you even went out and, somebody, I think I did a post kind of similar to what I've said here, my own personal feelings. And then you kind of chimed in because someone said, well, I agree with you, but I'm curious and blah, blah, blah. My thoughts were, for my level of engagement and what I'm looking for to get out of a con, the cruise is a better experience for me personally. And I think I think you feel the same, hon, because we talked a lot about it. My bigger interest is in speaking to the actors, having a conversation like you would with any person. They're just people. I wouldn't say I'm a starstruck kind of individual. I was excited to meet Anson Mount for the first time, which I did back at Mission Chicago a few months before Strange New Worlds came on last year. That was very cool. I love meeting Jonathan Frakes. I've been a fan of the Commander Riker character since I was 11 years old and TNG came on.
Well, Tawny Newsome remembered you from the cruise, and you had a little moment.
Tawny Newsome, who is Mariner on Lower Decks, she's a Second City comedian from Chicago, and she is just one of the funnier people I feel like I've ever met. I'm doing my handshake thing. We're walking around the room. We're standing in the line of Dawn Lewis, who plays Tawny's character's mother and the captain of the Cerritos, the ship on Lower Decks. And I wanted to chat with her and say, God, I loved you on In Living Color because, my mom worked for Fox when I was growing up and that show was on all the time and she got a chuckle out of that. But while we're standing online, Tawny she's immediately to my right, booth wise, of Dawn's booth. And I just said hi. Tawny had a line as long as humanly possible. And I simply said hi. And she said, hey, I remember you from the cruise. And I'm like, yeah, you and I were getting on the boat at the same time in Mexico. She's like, yeah, I had all these drugs on me. And she was obviously being facetious, but it kind of seized my heart. I was laughing so hard. Just, oh my goodness. That was fun. We had another interaction like that with over at Brent Spiner's table. His PA, her name is Whitney, and she's actually from Michigan, as we found out. She's from the Flint area as we got to talking. And she actually signed the back of my badge. She's like, I'll sign the back of your badge, give it to me. And she wrote in a big gold marker, Charlie, you are a great fan of something, W. But Brent Spiner was between people, and he's like, oh man, can somebody go out and score me some heroin? And I said, Brett, I'll go out in the parking lot for you. It's fine. I'm sure I can figure something out. Very irreverent guy, but it's just really funny that two named Star Trek actors were making, drug jokes.
But anyway, back to the cruise.
Yes.
So I'm gonna say my piece because you keep talking.
Yeah. So, in fairness, it's what I do.
Yes. So I think the big difference. There are a couple differences, I guess. One negative is that there aren't any vendors on the cruise, or none that beyond the actual you can buy merch related to the cruise,
right?
So
which
you can buy,
only get so far. Yeah,
you can buy a shirt and you can buy a coffee cup for the cruise, but there's no other vendors, so that's something that's missing on the cruise. But you can run into these people at the buffet. You can run into the stars at dinner. You can run into them while you're walking on the promenade, or you can dance with Nana in the evening, which you did.
Yes, I did. In addition to singing karaoke and just doing all these other fun activities.
And you can do yoga. And they had activities. There were planned things that were quite fun, watching them put on a play for us, or actually watching a show and making fun of it.
Right, they had a heckling of the TOS episode, The Savage Curtain. And again, Tawny was one of the actors, and they're riffing, and it was ridiculous.
Hilarious.
Oh my God.
Now, we didn't make it to all of the events on the cruise because there were so many. We didn't even do any of the parties like we did in Vegas.
Right, exactly.
But we still had a ton of fun. And we were going to various destinations, so we got to get off the ship and maybe even see some stars in Mexico. And I mean, our time in Mexico, some of it was great. Some of it was visiting a Mexican Walmart. But
right. That was very interesting.
Yeah. So we did various things, but we got to see ocean the whole time, and there was always tons of food, and you had already paid for it. So,
and more to the point, the ship is ultra modern. Obviously, it's a multi-million-dollar vehicle, where this Star Trek Las Vegas was held at the Rio, which is one of the casinos off the Strip, if you're at all familiar with Las Vegas. The show, as I understand it, moved away from the Rio either last year or the year before that, because the Rio was going to get this big rehab and all this different stuff. And then the Rio got sold to, would you say, Hilton or Marriott? One of the big hotel companies now owns it. I thought you had looked into it.
It starts with it's Hyatt.
Hyatt. There you go. So another H. That construction hasn't happened. So to me, and again, I stay in hotel. I'm not bragging because I do it for work, but I stay in hotels almost every week around the state of Michigan. I stick with the Hampton brand because it's just easier for me. And those also they vary in quality. Some are very nice. Some are very middle of the road. Some are kind of crappy. This was a very much 1980s. Didn't look like it had been updated. I mean, even the shampoo bottles. There was one bottle and one crunchy bar of soap to wash your body. The towels were very threadbare. There's, it's just, while it was a nice big room and we had a nice big view, which unfortunately included the Trump Tower, didn't really care for that, but you got to see mountains in the distance. That was kind of fun. But the facility overall, and then, everything, in Vegas, everything costs, everything costs on the boat too, but some things you've already paid for. So I don't want to go so far as to say it was frustrating, because that would be to indicate that I didn't think it was going to be that way. But it just didn't. The experience of the hotel casino didn't wow me. And plus, Las Vegas is still or Nevada in general is still allows smoking indoors. And if there's anything I can't stand less in this world, it's cigarette smoking. And so that was overall pretty gross for me. So yeah, I think it would. I think I would really have to think long and hard before going back to Star Trek Las Vegas. It was great to be there with some of our friends. It's great because it's such a destination that I met people in social media, other cosplayers that I'm familiar with on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, or just people that I've interacted with that way. That was very fun. And it's not something that you probably end up getting on the cruise, because people don't just drop by the cruise, because, it's a major, financial investment to go on the cruise. And as it was a big investment to do this as well. But yeah, the experience of it overall, I wasn't wowed, but at the same time, I probably wasn't there for the same kind of things that avid autograph people are going for, or avid, photo op people are going for. So
yeah, I think that's a big difference, because you can go in there and you can get all these people, and you can fill your book with the autographs and the photos. And 140 people if you go and do all of them, but that's all you're doing the whole time.
Right.
And that's the other thing.
Well,
your schedule is all about who you're getting signed next.
I know that when we left Missy and Kay on Sunday, they were like, Missy was like, "This is our big day. We don't have a minute to spare." And I'm like, that's cool. I dig it. For me, that would not be fun, but I know that Missy had fun, because that's something that they enjoy, and I totally respect that. But yeah, but for me, the cruise, you're on, and it's great because Missy and her husband Matt are going to be on the cruise with us. So that is awesome. And I look forward to having a lot of fun with Missy there. But yeah, I'm in Camp Cruise on this one. I don't know. I respect people who dig it, but I think a lot of things would have to change for me to be interested to go back. That's my take.
Yeah. We've heard so many great things from people for years about how wonderful Vegas is. And I was underwhelmed.
Yeah.
But the people that we were talking to, a lot of them were going after autographs.
Right, exactly. So
I think that's the big difference.
Most definitely. So, all right, well, to put a pin in it, if you love autographs, if you love photo ops, if you love to party and do all that kind of stuff, I would say, without a doubt, Star Trek Las Vegas is for you. If you like just kind of taking it easy and going to a fun exotic, or maybe not so exotic destinations, but doing different stuff and just hobnobbing with these actors, and you can, grab some chicken nuggets and maybe have a Starbucks and then just watch some wild, fun entertainment. You get to see these people in their element being entertainers. Then I would recommend the cruise. So anyway, we are on the cruise in 2024. What's the name of the company that puts on the cruise? Regardless, I think it's Epic. But just Google Star Trek The Cruise if you are interested in what we dig, or hit me up on Twitter at the C3 if you'd like to, learn more about it. If you're a Trekker and you dig it, we would love to, see you there and hang out and talk about Trek. So, not that I'm plugging for them, but if they want to send me a check, they can at me on Twitter and I'll give them my address. So,
there's a payment plan.
And there's a payment plan, which is how it was funny. It was at Mission Chicago. How they got us into doing it was through a payment plan. So, all right. Well, we're at the 33-minute mark here, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Honey, where do people find you out there on social media if they want to have a chat with you?
At the April Carden on Instagram.
Very good. And as always, you can find me, as I mentioned, over on Twitter at the C3 or at Secret Friends U for our main Twitter account. April and I are the proud command staff of the USS Grand Petoskey, one of the largest chapters of Starfleet, the international Star Trek fan club. We're based here in West Michigan. We do have chapters, we do have members all over the state and chapters all over the state. We're actually on the grow in Michigan, which we're very excited about. I also run Region 13, which includes Michigan and Eastern Canada. As always, if you're a Trekker within the sound of my voice and would like to be connected with other Trekkers in your area, drop us a line at a website of that name, www.ussgrandpetoskey.com, and find us on social media, and we can give you a hand. So with that, as always, I'm going to tell you that sharing is caring, and to keep on trekking.